How you doing, everybody? This is Brian Mazique, and it is my pleasure to have an opportunity to speak to PFL founder and chairman, Donn Davis. How you doing today, Don?
Great to always be with you. You and I have talked several times
Yes, sir.
since I started PFL, and we've never been a better spot. So I'm pleased to talk to you today.
Yes, yes. So I just want to ask, with the progress that that you guys are experiencing and the progress that has been made since the organization started, where would you say you stand right now on the MMA landscape, like in regards to over the other promotions, or in one instance, the other promotion in the world?
Yeah, it's interesting. I might answer it with kind of three bullet points, factual bullet points, because always everybody declares, "Oh, I'm the best," and then they never really back it up with anything.
Yeah.
But look, when you and I first started talking 6 years ago, we had a great vision to bring meritocracy and transparency to the sport, put the fighters in the center. They win, they advance. It's not promoter driven. Well, 6.5 years later, it's now UFC and PFL. It's a duopoly. There is no number three, number four, and number five. And a couple clear metrics behind that. If you took the top 300 fighters in the world by Fight Matrix rankings, the only independent ranking service, UFC has 190 of the top 300. PFL has 90 of the top 300 fighters. Mm-hmm. So if you took all other 100 MMA companies in the world, they have 20 together.
Yeah.
So what's very, very cool is UFC has twice as many events a year as PFL. They have 40, we have 20. So they're double the number of top 300 fighters as ours. Really means we have about the same equal star fighters. Wow. There's never been a sports league that has equal fighter talent. Most people think, big and little or superior and junior. Now, we know our brand isn't as big as theirs, Brian. We understand that. We have brand work to do. We're 6 years old or 30 years old. But the first bullet point I would give fans, from 0 fighters 6 years ago, we now have that level of quality. Second thing is distribution. We're on ESPN primetime in the United States. We're primetime on linear and streaming in 170 countries with 20 premium distribution partners. Exact same as ESPN. Even better for fans, most of our fights are free to watch. A third of their fights you got to pay for. And then the last thing I would leave people with is viewership. Very gratified.
Yeah.
This year, we're about 40% of UFC's viewership. How could this be? Nobody's heard of the PFL brand yet, and we're still young and we don't have marketing money. So we do about 500,000 total viewers in the United States per event. That's linear and streaming added together. UFC does about 1.1 million viewers per event, linear and streaming in the United States. So PFL in just 6 years has gone from 0 viewers to 500,000 viewers per event, and we're growing faster than them. So those are the three things that I would say from a pure startup with a great vision. We've been able to build athletes, distribution, viewership, and great momentum.
Yeah, I think that it's very noticeable, the growing and the legitimization of the overall promotion. Now, one of the biggest things that the next huge event is, of course, Battle of the Giants. And we saw an interview where you said that this event was going to cost you more than the UFC spent doing Noche UFC at the Sphere. So can you explain how Battle of the Giants is going to rival Noche UFC in overall scope and from a financial standpoint?
Yeah, look, I want to give UFC credit because the show they put on in terms of the Sphere and the theatrics was wonderful and beautiful. So do credit for them. I love innovation, and that was an innovative show. The difference is the fight card was a snoozer. So if you're a fight fan, that was an inferior fight card. October 19th, Battle of the Giants will have a fight card so far superior to the Sphere. It's not even close. Even if you're a diehard UFC fan, you're going to have to admit that. Ngannou versus Le Problemo. Cyborg versus Panchenko. So you really have the number 1 heavyweight in the world against the number 5 heavyweight in the world. And you have the number 1 versus number 2 women in the world. And that's even before you get to the next 2 fights, right? You got Evelyn Edwards and AJ McKee against phenom Paul Edwards. Mm-hmm. So the top 4 fights in this card, I can't find this year top 4 fights close to giving MMA fans more. And where is most of our money going? Quality of fights. Yes, this product from PFL on October 9th will exceed the $20 million Dana spent. The difference is it's going in the fights, not in the blah, 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 blah surrounding the screen.
Okay. So now I had heard that it's been some rumblings out there that Ngannou's going to get really, really well compensated and taken care of for this fight, and this overall deal is fantastic. So can you speak to like him? I think the first thing that I heard was well over $10 million, and you know, Larissa and Cyborg are both getting really, really nice paydays. Is that kind of where part of, like you said, where the money is going into?
Yeah, look, 50% of our cost of this fight is to the fighters. Mm-hmm. We have said on pay-per-view super fights, 50% of the revenue, not the profit, not Hollywood accounting, 50% of the revenue would go to the fighters. And that's what we're delivering on this card overall.
Yeah. That is really a model, I think, that obviously is going to attract fighters. They, because they all want, that's fighter pay is always one of the biggest things, one of the biggest conversations around the sport. Now, obviously, Ngannou's on the card, and talk about a little bit of what you are expecting to see, or if is that part of it for you too? It's been such a big layoff, you don't know what to expect.
Well, we know some of what to expect, but we don't know the outcome. That's why, as a fan, I love this. Francis left UFC as the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter. That's what a little bit sometimes people forget. He left as the UFC heavyweight champ, but he was number 1 pound-for-pound fighter of the ESPN rankings when he last fought in MMA. He's coming back to the cage for the first time. He's going against Le Problemo, who's risen faster in the ESPN rankings than any heavyweight fighter. He's now number 5. Mm-hmm. And he's more dynamic, harder puncher, 6'8" and could do a backflip. He's more interesting than anybody over there at UFC. So we got the best heavyweight fight going. Mm-hmm. What's going to happen? Francis is favorite in the odds. When you see the DraftKings book, a lot of people are saying, don't sleep on this guy who might be the best up-and-coming heavyweight in the world right now with Le Problemo. So what's going to happen? Nobody knows. That's why it's must see.
Yeah. That I do think it is from a competition standpoint, it may be the most intriguing major heavyweight fight on our upcoming schedule across MMA. I'm going to talk about Jake Paul. I believe Peter Murray mentioned that Jake would be wrapping up boxing sometime soon, because obviously he has the fight with Mike Tyson, and then beginning to focus on MMA because he signed with PFL, I think at the beginning of last year. So what's the timetable for that debut with the PFL, and is that going to come on a pay-per-view show?
Jake will fight on pay-per-view. He obviously has that draw like nobody else. Mm-hmm. His pay-per-views average between 400,000 and 500,000. Mm-hmm. Nobody touches that except for Conor McGregor, who hasn't, really fought 5 years very much. So he is a special kind of entertainer. So it will be a pay-per-view fight. And in terms of timing, we expect, middle to back half of 2025. That being said, he's active now, A, training, and B, talking about possible matchups. So this is all about the right matchup, as you know. Super fights are hard to bring together. We've worked on Francis Le Problemo for over a year to bring that together. Cyborg, Panchenko, over a year to bring that together. Super fights are hard to bring together. So Less important is the timing, more important is the right fight. But 2025, middle to back half would be my guess.
Okay. As far as when he does and he is matched up with someone, are you looking for someone who has almost no experience? Because at this point, this will be Jake's first ever mixed martial arts fight. So, and it's one thing I've said to people about like his boxing. I'm like, Jake's a very famous guy, but the people that he's fighting early in his career are not that much different than most fighters fight early in their career. The difference is Jake's already famous. So are you looking at similar matchmaking with his MMA career?
Well, first of all, Jake and Nikisa are in charge of that, and they're brilliant at that, and nobody better at that. So I let them take the lead, and they are at work at that. That's point one. But point two is, I'll remind everybody, we offered Nate Diaz twice a fight. And last time I checked, Nate Diaz is pretty good at MMA.
Yeah.
And last time I checked, Nate Diaz said no twice. So Jake is not necessarily running or hiding from anybody.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it's the opposite.
Yeah. So have you thought about this? What happens if Jake fights and he loses? How does that impact anything?
You know, in this sport, people fight and they lose all the time.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't Mayweather, of which you have to kind of keep protecting your record in order to have people watch you. Mike Tyson, who I believe is the greatest of all time, would occasionally lose. And in fact, he won so much that when he beat Leon Spinks, people didn't want to watch anymore. It happened so devastating, if you all remember. So this is a sport that there's so many ways to win and lose because it's made up of 6 sub-sports, that being a Khabib is not necessarily an achievable goal. What's an achievable goal is being dominant most of the time, being exciting most of the time, advancing your career all the time. So to me, that's the metric in MMA, whether you're Francis Ngannou, whether you're Jake Paul, whether you're Paul Hughes. It is not about the 0 in your losses. It's about domination, excitement, and advancement in your career.
Yeah. So speaking of some of the other people that you either have signed or have been mentioned, is there any news on Clarissa Shields getting back into the PFL smart cage?
No news on this.
Okay.
What's been super interesting is we offered Savannah to do the MMA version of their last big boxing fight, and Savannah turned it down.
Okay.
Not Clarissa.
Mm-hmm.
Savannah. So that would have been very interesting. That obviously would have been, I think, a big fight because their boxing fight was as big as there was. Mm-hmm. And I think they're both very similar in terms of where they are in MMA, in that they've had a couple fights, but clearly they are not very far advanced in terms of their expertise. I think that would have been very interesting. Clarissa said yes.
Yeah.
Savannah said no. Yeah. So to me, that was set to happen this year, and that would have been very interesting. So when that didn't happen, Clarissa went back to boxing, and call it 3/4 training boxing, 1/4 training MMA, and that's where her mind share is now.
Yeah, got it. I got two more questions for you. There was conversation about Muhammad Mokaev. He was released by the UFC or allowed to go after the end of his contract. There was some confusion as whether or not there was interest in signing him. I believe Ray Sefo initially said that you guys weren't, but then I saw Peter say we absolutely would be interested. Is there any opening at all for Mokaev? Because I know that's a weight class that you guys may be interested in building out at some point anyway. Where would you say the interest is when in regards to Mokaev?
There was no confusion because I never said anything.
Okay.
As I would say, we don't speculate on who we may or may not sign.
Okay.
And, that's not something that actively we would or wouldn't talk about. And if that ever becomes something we would or wouldn't talk about it, we'll talk about it if we do or don't do it.
Okay. Okay.
So that allows everything to be cleared up between agreements and disagreements that might have been spoken in the press.
Yeah, got you. That almost kind of covers my next question, because what I was going to ask is, it appears that Tony Ferguson and Holly Holm may be kind of they may be free either now or very soon. Are they? I mean, those are both are obviously legends of mixed martial arts. Both have solid, really good followings. Are they people that you would be interested in at all?
I would say, look, we respect everyone, whether they are emerging stars or proven superstars.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike other organizations, I have nothing positive to say about people who are giving it their all. Just like I'm giving it my all building the company, I only want to be a positive energy guy. There's a lot of negative energy in the world, right? Yeah. So overall, though, what you've seen PFL do is we're the place for the rising next generation of stars. Mm-hmm. Of the 5 biggest stars in the last 18 months, PFL has signed 4 of the 5 stars. Mm-hmm. And those stars have chosen to come to PFL because they want to control their destiny, be on a big stage, make more money, and mostly be in charge of their own opportunity. Baki, Doumbé, Dakota, Paul Hughes, all heavily recruited by UFC, all came here. Only one went there, Bo Nickel. Mm-hmm. Those are the 5 biggest stars in the last 18 months who were clearly on the rise, next generation. So we're winning 4 out of 5. That tells you something about where the sport is going. And people who are 30 or 35 years old, they only grew up with UFC. Mm-hmm. Of course, they aspire to go to UFC. People are 20, 25. PFL was around when they were starting to train. And so now what they aspire to is to be a champion, control their destiny, and make money. And therefore they say, I got 2 choices, 2 choices that are good. And we're winning more than the other guy. And that's our focus.
Yeah. It's all choices and options are always great, and they're always better for us overall. Just even from a fan standpoint, it's always great to have 2 different major promotions for which to watch. And you get to fantasize about, what would happen if this guy fought this guy or this girl fought this girl. Do you really, in your heart, believe that that's something that'll ever happen? That the UFC will ever allow their fighters to fight you guys?
No, because Dana knows what'll happen. We'll win half, and he'll win half. I made a post this morning, just an hour before I talked to you, mm-hmm. putting up 7 of our champions against 7 of his champions, mm-hmm. because ESPN did an article this morning talking about hypothetical trades. Got me just thinking about cross promotion.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty obvious that it would go 50-50. Mm-hmm. And if Dana had 50% of his supposed bulletproof people lose mm-hmm. to PFL people, well, his $12 billion company and my little $800 million company, that wouldn't look very good for him.
Right. Yeah.
Well, the facts are that's what would happen. He can't let that happen. So he'll never accept that.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that the freedom that you've offered to people like Francis Ngannou, Clarissa Shields, even Jake Paul, obviously it's a little different. His agreement is different, but the freedom that everybody has had to do their thing, like the money that Ngannou has made counting the fight that he's going to have next month and the last 2 fights he just had in boxing, the money that he's made, I don't know the numbers, but I'm pretty sure it's probably been 10 times what he made throughout his whole entire career with the UFC. Do you think that kind of thing is going to pique the interest of fighters like who have already created a brand of some sort for themselves with the UFC, but they maybe feel restricted because they can't do some of the crossover stuff that is obviously earning for people?
Absolutely. If we are on the call 5 years from now, more top fighters will be in PFL than at UFC because it's in the fighter's interest. All of us want opportunity, whether you're a businessman or whether you're a fighter.
Mm-hmm.
You want to go as far as you can go. You don't want to be held down under somebody's thumb, and you don't want to be artificially held back. You want to know the path to become champion and the path to become wealthy, and you want it in your control. What PFL offers fighters is opportunity and freedom. You can become wealthy and you can become champion based on only one thing: your actions.
Mm-hmm.
Not us holding you back, not us making artificial decisions who's next in line, not us deciding whether we like your social media followers. Your abilities determine your wealth and your opportunity. That's what we all want in the world. And that's what PFL offers.
Yeah, it's a very interesting motto. I asked you this, and this is my last question. I asked you this some years ago, back when we first started, and at that time you weren't, didn't want to do that, and I wonder if this has changed. Is there any interest at all in a PFL video game?
Yeah, no. I would love one,
Mm-hmm.
and I also know. I was an early investor in Scopely, one of the biggest video game companies in the world, sat on the board for a long time. Our brand has to become more well-known for it to be a successful video game company. And when you asked me then, we weren't.
Yeah.
We're now entering the phase where our brand is better known. Obviously, I would consider our brand in middle school, right? Whereas the UFC brand is in college. Okay, so we have room to grow. But I think, yes, we're now at the point that I think we could be a great game solution. And I think we'll start looking at those partnerships in 2025.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That definitely is very interesting and exciting. I'm a huge gamer, so I'm definitely that always piques my interest for sure. So I appreciate your time today, Donn, so much. Thank you so much for talking to me about all these different things. It's a very exciting time in mixed martial arts, and the PFL has a lot to do with that.
Look, I always appreciate you. What we care most about, and I do a lot of press, is getting the word out to fans.
Yeah. Yes.
As you say, PFL is doing something very different.
Mm-hmm.
Half of our fans are UFC fans, and they also watch PFL, and half are sports fans where MMA is new. And so I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
100%. Hopefully we get an opportunity to do it again sometime soon.
Okay. Take care, man.
All right. You have a great one. Yes, sir.